Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank Don Swanson and Freedom Works for the opportunity to be here. This is my second year here, and I would certainly like this to be the start of a tradition for me as well. I'm happy to be over here in Macon County. I would like to thank Senator Jim Davis very much, not only for what he does in Raleigh, but I would like to thank him very much for wearing a tie today. That eliminated the need for me to wear a tie. Some of my ancestors were horse thieves, and I cannot really stand anything around my neck. I would also like to state unequivocally that I am definitely 100% not a candidate for athletic director at University of Tennessee. I also was informed before I came here that the program is running a little early, and I was asked to see if I could expand my remarks. So before I start, I think we shall have an hour-long discussion about why we need to audit the Fed, and I'd like to talk about nullification as well. Anyone object to that? The 4th of July is a very, very special holiday, not only for our country, but for each of us as individuals and for families as well. I want you to think back to what the 4th of July was like when you were young. What are your childhood memories of the 4th of July? I know what mine were. We would go down, I lived in a small town, the entire town would come out. Families would be there, there'd be parades, picnics, fireworks, patriotic speeches. But you know something? It all revolved around the family. Fathers, mothers, grandparents, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, together celebrating the birth of our nation as a family. The family is the social unit that for centuries has defined the backbone of our nation. The family is the cornerstone of freedom. From colonial days through the settlement of the West, the industrial area, and into the 20th century, the strength of our nation's prosperity and economic growth depended on that bond of lineage and patriotism. The family and economics, the family and business, the family and God. You know, in my hometown, as you walked around the streets, and probably in your hometowns as well, how many businesses did you see that had the name such as John Smith and Sons? John Smith and Sons. Without uttering a single word, a company with that name is making a statement. That statement is, I am the patriarch of this family, and I have established this family business for the wealth and security of my wife, my children, and their progeny. This is truly the expression of the American dream, that the sweat of my brow accrues to the benefit of the next generation, so that they may reach even greater heights of success and comfort. Isn't that not the wish of every single parent for his children? Didn't all of you have that very same goal? About 100 years ago, my grandparents were legal immigrants to this nation. They came here with absolutely nothing but the desire to be part of the American dream. They went to night school to learn English, and they went to work. They wanted to be successful, a bit for themselves, but more for their children and their grandchildren, and all of those generations to follow. Their success would be the freedom for our family. They took advantage of this country. We went from immigrant to educated professional in one generation. There is no other country on earth where that can be said. Those dreams and those hopes were based on a seemingly unlimited future for our nation. Unfortunately now, that future is in grave doubt. 235 years ago, a very small group of men risked everything for this country. They risked their families, their homes, their jobs, their businesses, and even risked their lives in order to create this nation. Now those brave patriots are portrayed by the liberal press as wealthy white slave owners, and the Constitution they created is called outdated and irrelevant. We all know, however, that they understood that the ability of men to govern themselves in freedom was based on Judeo-Christian morality, honesty, faithfulness, natural law rights, and a rock-solid belief in the divine origin of life itself. Natural law rights come from God. They do not come from a government who can take them away. They belong to us by dint of our humanity. The Constitution was written as an antidote to the abuses of King George's tyrannical rule. In that era, if you spoke your mind or printed your opinion in public, and it was against the king, you were arrested. Hence, the First Amendment. Soldiers could write their own search warrants on your doorstep and invade your privacy, invade the privacy of your home and family. The basis of personal freedom is the right to own property that cannot be arbitrarily seized by the government through taxation and confiscation. Hence, the Fourth Amendment. The British governors of the colonies were very fearful of the colonists. There was a lot of unrest, and so they asked King George if they could take the guns of the colonists. When they marched on Lexington, our patriot ancestors, the Minutemen, stood up, and the shot heard round the world was fired. Hence, the Second Amendment. The Constitution was designed to protect and secure our liberties for future generations by limiting the size and power of any federal authority. Limited government, private property, personal responsibility, fiscal restraint, and free market economy, the 5 pillars of freedom. Time and technology cannot alter those principles. They are as relevant today as they were 235 years ago. So now, my fellow patriots, and you're patriots because you're here, we are ruled by a gang of interchangeable thieves and liars who seek office for personal gain and sacrifice principle for political expediency. We are suffering now from an avalanche of bureaucracy, an avalanche of regulations. Bureaucrats who think somehow they have the right to create and fund entitlement programs whose sole purpose is to re-elect the incumbent party in Washington. The time has come for citizens now to search for and to elect to public office patriots who are not afraid to stand up and fight for the principles on which this nation was founded. In America, we have a long history of standing up, don't we? Patriots have been behaving badly for centuries in the defense of freedom. Let me give you an example. In 1775, the elders of the colony of Virginia met secretly in Richmond. Among them were Thomas Jefferson, the pen of the Revolution, Patrick Henry, the voice of the Revolution, and George Washington, the sword of the Revolution. Some of those men there wanted to beg and grovel at the feet of King George, beg for relief and justice. And that's when Patrick Henry stood up and proclaimed, "I know not what course others may choose, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death." In that instant, In that very instant, Patrick Henry defined forever the difference between a statesman and a politician. A politician sticks his finger in the air to see which way the wind is blowing and acts accordingly. A statesman will never hesitate to stand up for principle and for his country. Every day now, it seems, the government at all levels takes greater control over our lives. I read in astonishment every day of each bold, brazen, and unconstitutional action that steals the birthright of liberty from each of us, piece by piece. I personally am the eternal optimist. My dear wife, Rhonda, unfortunately, or fortunately, is my pessimistic opposite. So we see all this and we talk about everything that's happening, and she says to me, "It's not going to stop, is it?" Rhonda, it will stop, but only when patriots are willing to stand up. And just like the Marines, I am looking for a few good citizens to stand up with me. And I mean physically stand up and set the example for others to follow, because no longer is it acceptable to turn a blind eye to those who would enslave us all to satisfy their lust for wealth and power. They must be defeated, and they can if we all stand up as they did 235 years ago. And we must stand up together, because the price for failure will be paid with the slavery of future generations. God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much.